At the beginning of the story, we see Rick having a midlife crisis. Thus, he decides to quit his old, boring job at the Adventurers Guild and pursue his dream of becoming an adventurer. Surprisingly, he manages to join the strongest party on the continent, known as Oricalcum Fist. Over the past 2 years, he was trained to the brink of death by his fellow party members so that he could become an adventurer. As his ruthless training comes to an end, the members of Oricalcum discuss how Rick has improved over the past 2 years and should easily pass the exams. They even imply that Rick might destroy the arena. With that being said, Rick heads to the Adventurers Guild. While signing up for the E-rank promotion exam, Rick bumps into Elisa, a former co-worker from 2 years ago. Elisa tells him how surprised she was when she learned that Rick decided to become an adventurer in his 30s. Well, it's unprecedented for someone to become an adventurer in their 30s. Unlike Rick, people usually sign up for the E-rank adventurer in their teens. The conversation between Rick and Elisa comes to a sudden halt as a drunk guy named Domold asks Elisa out on a date, but fails miserably. As Domold becomes a little annoying, Rick steps in and stops him. Domold then passes out. Elisa then gives Rick his exam ticket.
You sussy baka!
After that, Rick meets up with Ryanette, who is also a member of Oricalcum Fist. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, we learn that Rick actually knocked out Domold. By the way, Domold is a former A-rank adventurer, wanted for assault. Anyway, the examination finally starts. Needless to say, everyone is surprised by Rick's age. As he places his hand on a magical energy measure orb, it barely reacts. As a result, everyone present starts laughing at Rick. However, they fail to notice that the orb shatters soon after. For the next test, they need to strike a green slime bag with all their strength. The instructor also implies that the slime can withstand their attacks. Meanwhile, Rick recalls how his fellow party member, Broston, forced him to punch golden slime 50,000 times each day. By the way, the golden slime is supposed to be as strong as dragon fangs. For the next examinee, we have Freed Diremuit, your usual noble brat. By the way, people consider him a prodigy as his magic is already at the C-rank level, despite being only 11. With an arrogant attitude, Freed throws a fireball at the slime, leaving everyone amazed. Meanwhile, Rick recalls how Alice, another member of Oricalcum Fist, used to throw fireballs at him. As Rick steps forward to demonstrate his physical strength, one of the examiners expresses doubts about Rick's potential due to his age. However, to everyone's surprise, Rick effortlessly destroys the slime bag with a single punch. Needless to say, everyone is shocked. Meanwhile, Freed vows to perform better in the defense test. Well, Freed is pissed at Rick for outshining him in the strength exam. He also implies that there's no way that the old guy could beat him at defense. But things didn't go quite according to plan. Rick not only effortlessly evaded the usual attack, but he also remained unscathed, even after being hit by an advanced magic spell. Needless to say, nobody could believe what they were witnessing. Meanwhile, a first-ranked knight named Sylvester heads to the guild after witnessing the huge explosion. Needless to say, he is also stunned after learning about the situation. Rick then finishes the written exam. As Rick is chilling with Ryanette, Freed approaches him. Freed then throws a tantrum. He complains about how he was supposed to show off his skills during the exam, but Rick stole his thunder. As Freed starts crying, his sister, Angelica, comes to comfort him. Then Freed tells Angelica that Rick bullied him. Thus, Angelica challenges Rick to a duel. Rick accidentally accepts the duel by picking up the glove. Angelica arrogantly declares that as a second-class knight, she would give Rick the punishment he deserves. As for the terms of the duel, Angelica tells Rick that the loser would have to become the winner's servant. Meanwhile, Rick asks Ryanette if he is good enough to face a second-class knight. Well, Rick still underestimates himself, but Ryanette assures him that he can do it. Thus, the duel begins. At first, Angelica thinks she can beat Rick with her speed. Both Angelica and Freed start to mock Rick. By the way, she is known as Lightspeed Angelica. However, in reality, Rick can easily read her movements. Needless to say, Rick easily dodges one of her attacks. Meanwhile, Angelica believes it was just a fluke. As Angelica charges towards Rick, Rick wonders if he is actually strong. But then Angelica trips and accidentally makes it look like she has unleashed a formidable attack. Thus, Rick begins to doubt his strength again. Angelica tries to attack Rick again, but Rick easily dodges her attacks. Angelica finally begins to realize that Rick is not an ordinary F-rank adventurer. On the other hand, Angelica starts reaching her limit. With no other choice, Rick finally decides to go on the offensive. Meanwhile, Angelica is scared to death. Well, she understands that if that punch had landed on her, she would have been a goner. Thus, Angelica decides to retreat this time.